2024 elections are a woman who must decide between a boyfriend who gives good sex and a boyfriend who pays the bills.
I'm excited Umkhulu is back in the country. The last time we had a conversation, it was just the same week as the Zim elections. The Zim elections have come and gone, and we're keeping up. He's back in the country. I'm quite excited. The year has just started. It's February. Thokoza Mkhulu.
Oh, Mkhulu. And you guys are going in. You guys are going in for elections, and so is Zambia also going into elections. Brilliant observation. Hakainde was shouting about Mnangagwa not being legitimate and what. And by the way, Hakainde is a friend, a well-known brother to me from the religious space. And as fate has it, Mnangagwa is now the chairman of SADC, and Zambia must have elections this year. So I'm just watching with excitement, being the watcher, to see how Ramaphosa and Mnangagwa are going to be dealing with the SADC chairman, whom they did not legitimize during his election. It's just a fun of politics.
But how has it been in Zim since the elections?
It's been quite eventful, I must say.
Yeah.
The CCC has collapsed, not as a party, but in terms of leadership. Chamisa has opened up his resigned as a leader of the opposition party, as of this week actually, and is planning to open up another party. Shabangu and Sinkala, the one who's in prison, they might want to structure a new space there. BT, he has disappeared into Europe or America over some scandals that he did when he was still Minister of Finance.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting space actually to be observing that the danger of African politics is this messianic obsession that I'm the only one who must lead and no one else can. And I think South Africa is even heading towards there. And I want to maybe send a warning. No one has ever done this to Julius or to Gayton or to Ramaphosa. But you are not the only leader in a country. In the event that you die, the country still proceeds. And Chamisa, I think in his head, he's obsessed. And I just hope that Malema is not falling in the same space. That if one day the principles of EFF are not expouted by him, no one else can do it except me. Because then the whole concept of democracy falls into oblivion. So, but for Zimbabwe, I am convinced that power politics and unwillingness of a community to allow the process of election to take place has actually destroyed the Citizen Coalition Party into pieces, and we're heading for a very interesting time the next couple of weeks because there's no more opposition now, like literally speaking.
What is the future of Zimbabwe?
The future of Zimbabwe is...
What does it look like?
It's bright, brilliant. You see, until we begin to notice and understand the influence of the multinational and colonial systems on our economic systems, we'll still be waiting to hope, to think, to wish that the solutions are coming from outside. But immediately the local people, be it in South Africa, Old Mutual must be owned by blacks. Sanlam must be owned by blacks. Standard Bank must be fully black owned. Absa, FNB, and all these instruments must be in black hands. And the government must take its money into its African institutions. And from there then distribute to the rest of the community. But as long as we have these white multinational communities and bankers and insurers and funders as the middlemen, hence our last conversation that we had, which I think many people took offense, but some started seeing the light at the end of the day when I said, why must we vote for Ramaphosa when actually he's being managed by Stellenbosch. Why not just bring Stellenbosch to the fore? Then we know exactly if there's no electricity. Siyakubaba.
Who to blame?
Siyakubaba Rupert. Sithi baba Rupert sicela usilayhle lamagesi. Kube simple nje. Rather than ANC right along, because you're not willing as ANC to talk about land. You're not willing to talk about transfer of international institutions into our spaces of function. You simply want to become a shadow dresser, protecting the investors that are behind the walls. This cannot be forever. And the generation that is coming up right now is not from the 1940s, 1950s. My boy, Africa. No, says Ibuile. And these kids that are being born now want answers to genuine questions. Who is running South Africa? Who is owning our land? Where are we going to be? And these are legitimate questions. No matter how educated you are as a South African, a black South African, and you don't want to look at these questions in your face, your child's boo, if she's below 6 years old, she will ask you one day, who is Nelson Mandela? Who is Thabo Mbeki? Who is Chris Hani? And they're not pretending. They honestly don't know. So Zimbabwe is heading towards that wake-up call, where we notice that the liberation heroes are not the economic heroes, unless the liberation heroes upgrade their software to begin to implement transformative policies towards black ownership of business, enterprise, and means of production.
We are headed the same way, as in towards the elections in South Africa, a couple of months away. They have not announced the exact date.
You must wait for Stellenbosch. They will announce it.
Your thoughts on South Africans' upcoming 2024 elections?
2024 elections are a woman who must decide between a boyfriend who gives good sex and a boyfriend who pays the bills. And I don't know how South Africans will choose. If they want a sexy man who has no money, or a healthy man in bed who has no means. So we're at a junction of, do we get dignity for ourselves, or do we get financial stability when our emotions are being abused? There's one way of choosing for an economic prosperous South Africa in the hands of the multinationals and the colonialists. It's another option to choose for a South Africa that is poor, but we're willing to build this country to what we want it to be. Unfortunately, we've wasted more than 25 years, and we can't account for what we've done for the past 25 years. So the elections will be a plateau. My pain is just 150 political parties in South Africa, and each one of those leaders want to be the president. Then they cannot meet in one room and merge their agenda and itinerary and strategy as African leaders. Gayton, what are you saying? Kenigunene, what are you saying? Malema, what are you saying? Mukweng, what are you saying? And we come together and come up with a strategy and then pause for ourselves. Because there are only three parties in South Africa. It's ANC, it's the white people, and opposition. So if those three parties could begin a conversation, and these black brothers, if they meet in unity, they can always go back to their older brother, who is ANC. But the relationship between ANC and DA is very detrimental to the future of the country. But ANC can talk to all, including Likota, including IFP, because they're all black. And if your agenda as a leader of this opposition is to do with development of the African people, then who leads it does not matter. It's who benefits it from the agenda.
Your thoughts on the new MK party?
A snake is sleeping in the cave or in a hole, and then you go there and you poke it and you poke it and you poke it. You forget when a snake goes into the cave, it doesn't go with its head inside. Immediately the head is inside, the snake turns back and looks out on the hole and then pulls the rest of the body into the hole. Anyone who pokes the hole and does not know how a snake functions is waiting for a day when the snake will smite them on their faces. And I think it was good enough or bad enough to harass Msholozi. And what Msholozi did vis-a-vis what Oppenheimers and Rupert's did, vis-a-vis what Ramaphosa, Thabo Mbeki, Nelson Mandela Foundation did, I think we're being naive to think that we can chase 1.4 million that Msholozi is said to have taken from the government on the arms deal of the French when Nelson Mandela Foundation was the beneficiary and Thabo Mbeki was a chairman on that conversation, and you want to kill this guy simply because he's a Zulu, he's an educated man. I think we're being very naive because the deal itself was worth billions, if not trillions. So the question is, what are we talking about in terms of who benefits from this? And I think we are heading for what I might want to call political polarization, almost maturing into political anger, where the common people are getting fed up with the lies of the politicians, pointing us to wrong enemies when they are themselves the real thieves. And for right now, as we are speaking, to be ANC is equivalent to being a deal maker, to being a tenderpreneur, to being a beneficiary of the system. It is no longer about the ethics, the foundational statements. My boy, Africa. ANC has now transformed herself into an economic hub of well-connected people who have access to resources, to contracts, to tenders, and etc. And which is a wrong thing, because the people in the raw areas who are the real beneficiaries of this principle and party are not beneficiating at all.
A lot of people are saying the MK party is going to do damage to the ANC's vote in the KZN. I listened to an interview Yaga Mama Nomvula Mukanyane on Metro FM with Ms. Faith Mangope, and she was saying, we're used to this as the ANC. It happened with the PAC, it happened with the UDF, it happened with COPE, it happened with the EFF. And yes, we might be facing something that a lot of people might think it will be detrimental to the country, but we're just going to go out there to the ground and work the ground and get our people understood.
We are winning the Baka Samson Ebabilin. He won a few battles in the front. And the day when his head was shaved, Samson says, I'll wake up as usual. We have fought this in the past. And I will win again. That's the day Samson lost his eyes. That idea on its own of being presumptive towards MK. I was avoiding you on the other question.
Yeah.
That's why I went to the left.
Yeah, because I saw you didn't even have make mention of MK.
But the MK sits the army, sits the intelligence, sits the disgruntled ANC personnel that have not benefited from the business transactions in the country. The MK sits the muscle of war in the country. And to think that they are worth nothing, you need to look at the crime records in this country and find out who, if not 15, 20, 30, 40, Bekicele might call me to order to give him the correct statistics. But some of the biggest crimes happening in this country are in the hands of the military personnel who are trained in explosives, in bombs, in guns, etc. And they are not employed in the system. To think that MK is a joke can only come from a person who does not know how military and war works. This is not EFF. This is not NP. This is not DP. This is not AP. This is MK, which is the backbone of the military intelligence of ANC. And when that breaks off with its leader, who is Jacob Zuma, only fools who don't know how strategies work would thumbsuck and have lollipops in their mouths. Because this is something. MK's breakaway brings a disparity in ANC between the bourgeoisies and the oligarchs in the financial system and the poor people. Unfortunately, We'll have Ramaphosa protecting the interest of the economically viable, and Zuma representing the pain and the tears of those at the bottom. And the populations are not divided equally. For those at the bottom are more than those that are at the top. Unfortunately, those that are at the top are managing those at the bottom. The formation of MK is a cry inside ANC to say we have become too economic, too bourgeoisie, too oligarchy-like, too pro-colonial protection, too white preservative. We've forgotten the people that brought us into power and the reason why the party itself is existing. And anyone who would protect the electorate, economically viable ANC, cannot do so without losing the viability of the common people.
So you do agree that it'll have a very big impact on ANC's vote?
If I was ANC, I would not sleep, not for one day. Because Jacob Zuma, I came here in 1991, by the way, so, and I worked in the reconciliation of peace in Kwamashu, in Mkungundlovu, in Pietermaritzburg, the ANC and IFP wars that were happening there, the taxis and etc. And so I have my fair share of understanding exactly of what role Jacob Zuma played in the reclamation of KwaZulu-Natal into alignment with the ANC, away from IFP, which is a fact that all of us would know, that had Zuma not been present, IFP would have been running KwaZulu-Natal to date. But Zuma, having been from KwaZulu-Natal and being a stalwart of ANC, gave the KwaZulu-Natal an understanding and a sympathetic understanding that he's one of us and he's with ANC and they have instruments of power. So if we have him, we will be able to get somewhere. And you undermine that, you throw all that into the dustbin, you victimize Zuma over Nkandla, you don't want to talk about Stellenbosch, Palapala.
But they say they protected him.
But the man is in jail, the man is in prison, the man is in trunk, the man is still answering questions and etc. It's victimization. By no ways am I saying corruption is well, but the corruption you're talking about is far much less than the corruption. Talk to me about PIC, talk to me about this insurance company, these chartered accountants who right now build the model. How many billions? How many billions?
What, Steinhoff?
Steinhoff. How many billions? You tell me that 1.4, 1.6 million that you are crucifying Zuma for does not receive the amount of coverage that Steinhoff, with wiping away all the insurances of every working South African in the country. And he appears only once on newspaper. That's how bad he is. And he disappears. He's sitting in Dubai or in Cape Town in his retirement home. Is this what we are saying South Africa is all about? I mean, the money that was found on Tate Ramaphosa's couch on its own, vis-a-vis the 700 million which was spent on crucifying Zuma. How do you justify those costs? So I'm not protecting anything, but I'm saying if you say you want justice, then do justice. If you say you want fairness, then do fairness.
Don't have double standards.
Don't do that. Don't do that. The Standard Bank, ABSA, FNB, were caught in the price fixing and the messing up of the South African rand. Thabo Mbeki has that report in his hands. He's the one who instituted that report. And it was proved that there was price fixing in terms of the rand and the international community. Did we hear any penalties given to any of those companies? How many jobs were lost? How much money was lost? So I'm not particularly taken away by media telling me who to hate and who to love, who to accommodate and who to be repelled by. But in my own space of reading and looking at the terrain of political and economic affairs space, I kind of feel like we're not being fair. And by not being fair, we're not being honest to ourselves. And by not being honest, we're losing the real enemy amongst ourselves and we're fighting each other instead of looking into the real place where the problems are being cooked, and that is multinational monopoly of African capital.
So you do agree with the likes of Ntate Prince Mashele, who's a well-known political analyst in South Africa, when they say South Africa, for the first time in its history, we are going for a coalition government, and the future of South Africa is just coalition government?
It's going to be like that. And fortunately, a good mother who is able to apologize early to his or to her children is able to win them back towards a common understanding. But an arrogant parent who is aware of the pain of the children, but then continues to say, I will not change. This is me. I brought you into this world. I can take you out of this world. That kind of arrogance can only build resistance. All black opposition parties in the country are children of ANC. It only takes ANC a wake-up call to say, Likota was wrong. Okay. Malema was wrong. Okay. MK is wrong. Okay. ACDP is wrong. Okay. AP is wrong. Okay. Now you look at all your 150 children coming out of you as a parent, and all of them are wrong except you as a parent. Come on, Sbu. Who is fooling who? Who is messing up who here? We're no longer children to be led astray by political slogans. Any political party that has reached maturity must be able also to understand, why did Lekota leave to form COP? Why did Malema leave to form EFF? And you look at Lekota's disgruntlement, you look at Malema's disgruntlement, you look at Mackenzie, you look at Ahmed Mashaba, you look at IFP, and all you begin to see.
Bantu Holomisa, UDF.
Oh, yes, UDM. Actually, UDM is a full ANC, and Holomisa is known to me as a brother. Full MK trained military general, Holomisa. And he says, no. We're missing it here. And you as ANC, you put on your solid plastic clothes. You get public media spinners like Wombalula. You can do it, but not all the time. And I think the time is running off and running out, where honesty will start surfacing out. And if we're being honest as ANC, and I'm saying so from understanding the Zanu-PF position, which my father almost died for, and I am a Zanu-PF follower, not for anything, but for historical understanding of where this party has been from to give us the Zimbabwe that we have and the sacrifice that we've done. And I'm sorry to say that in South Africa, you have lots of ANC people that are exactly in my position, where you may not fully agree with the leaders, but the ethos of the party which you grew up knowing are entrenched inside you. And for loyalty, you have to vote ZANU-PF. You have to vote ANC. But given time to sit around with those ANC and ZANU-PF people, if they open up the microphone and say, MAPONGA J, tell us what you think about us as a party, I bet to differ that we'll walk out of that meeting in the same, we'll get on the same lift. Because there are genuine issues that I would want to raise with my own political party. And same goes to some of people like yourselves who are in ANC. All you knew, Umzabalazo, everything was ANC. And you cannot tell me that after 20, 40 years later, this thing that we were fighting for is no longer legitimate. You disillusion me. You almost throw me into madness. Because this is all I grew up knowing and understanding. 1976, Chris Hani, Nelson Mandela, Maibui, Africa, ANC, Oliver Tambo, and etc. This punctuated our knowledge system. And to wake up one morning with a corrupt system that does not want to address its problems, but wants to bribe me and force me into compliance with their corruption for the sake of the loyalty of the past I'm coming from, I think that's political abuse at its highest form. If it is ZANU-PF, if it is SWAPO, if it is UNDP, if it is ANC, you are taking the people that support you for granted.
But do you love Zimbabwe more than you love Zanu PF? Do you love Zanu PF more than you love Zimbabwe? People then are questioning your loyalty to Zanu PF. Don't you love your country more?
That's a painful question, Sbu. That's a painful question. You can't even put Zanu PF and Zimbabwe in the same line. It should have been Rhodesia and Zanu PF. Because the very fact that you can talk about Zanu PF, you're already talking about the party that transformed Rhodesia to become this. So without Zanu PF, to be honest, there will be no Zimbabwe. Without ANC, honestly, there will be no South Africa. In the republic that we are talking about is a rainbow nation. Had Chris Hani, Botambo, and other guys been alive with their radical moves, maybe South Africa would not be what it is. Would have been in a war, maybe. Or, better still, maybe would have had the Azania that we were looking for. But through negotiations with this rainbow nation, with 2 sentences each of each country and each tribe in the country, and South Africans, particularly the white ones, singing, South Africa is our land, which still remains as a song for the continent. So I don't love the party more than I love the people, but I cannot undermine the contribution of the party towards the country that I now love. And if the country begins to destroy, if the party begins to destroy the country, my allegiance remains with the country more than with the party.
So you're saying the Cape Independence Party then is justified by wanting to break away from the rest of the country?
If the Cape Town wants to break away, then the Venda must break away. KwaZulu-Natal must break away. Northern Province must break away. Free State must break away. You can't give privileges only to white people, and black people around the country don't have the same privilege. So if Orania is authorized, Cape Town, Cape Colours are authorized, then let's allow the Northern Cape to do the same. Let's allow the KwaZulu-Natal to do the same. So if Cape Town is allowed to break away, why are you afraid of KwaZulu-Natal breaking away also into a separate state? Because by population, KwaZulu-Natal is the highest population in the whole country. 18 to 22 million people in this country are Zulus. And if we believed in democracy, can I throw a spanner into the works? Then majority must rule. The question is, who are the majority? So South Africa must be ruled by Zulus. So don't talk about democracy when you don't understand what it means. If majority means people of the same, and those people can agree to be in the same space, and if all Zulus right now can come together, and all of them can go to the voting station, no other tribe can stand to challenge their voting power. To play the game of we are democratic, hey, we don't want to play party politics. You cannot talk about party politics without talking democracy. You cannot talk democracy without talking demographics. And demographics is how many are here. So you can't tell me that there are 1,500 people here of this color. There are 2 people of this color. And the 2 people must govern the 1,500 and you call that democracy. Because the 1,500 voted for the 2. When the 2 manipulated the votes of the 1,500 to vote for themselves. So this is the mischief that we understand how economics rapes democracy and politics.
South Africa just came from the ICJ court overseas, the International Court of Justice, taking Israel for
God.
They took them to court for what do they call that charge? They said they're accusing them of committing a genocide, right?
First time in the history of Africa where Africa is a big old woman is beginning to be responsible for the abuse of other children. Africa ngugogo. The other children are being beaten and she stood up. I want firstly to congratulate South Africa for that. Not that I support Israel or Palestine, but just the idea of facing up to justice in the face of the international community. We are now teaching America. We are now teaching The Hague. We are now teaching even Britain what it means to be just and to be right, to be honest. When you say that you don't believe in human rights abuse, it means that an injury to one is an injury to all. And if what South Africa has done will not go on record, in the world record, as being a noble practice, then there's nothing noble in the face of the earth. Because we have countries that are designing weapons. In the backdrop of this, I'll tell you why Europe and America are afraid of standing in South Africa. Because immediately South Africa wins this case, it opens a can of worms to all the other crimes that has happened in the past that was much more genocide than Palestine. So America must come forward and account for Hiroshima, account for Afghanistan, account for Syria, account for Libya. Britain must come and account for Zimbabwe, for South Africa, for Zambia, for India, and etc. America must account for the Red Indians, and etc. And this is justice. If you're talking about justice, then it is no longer about African justice, but it's world justice. And in the context of that, as we spoke on the other program, maybe we need to resurrect Leopold. We need to resurrect the Spanish. We need to resurrect the Catholic Church, the Vaticans, and begin to talk about, when you talk about justice and you talk about genocide, define genocide. No, it is when one country that has military power, has access, and they are able to kill other people, exterminate them and wipe them, and the people they are killing are not able to protect themselves. What? You give me a definition. And we take that definition and we walk past and back into history and identify where genocide has happened and tell me which superpower would remain standing on its own feet. So this is a plateau case study where South Africa has shown, number one, which I might want to call democratic maturity, to be able to walk up to the international community and seek for justice. And this time around, thank you, South Africa, not for themselves, but for the Palestinians. And shame on the Jews, shame on the Americans, shame on the British, shame on the Europeans, who want to teach democracy to the world, but deny it to those that badly need it. Then who is fooling a who? Would rather go back to our indigenous governance systems. Because in all honesty, this whole democratic process is not available to everybody else. So South Africa, going to Hague, the best thing that have happened. And what a shame also when you notice other African countries standing with Israel. And as I said to you earlier on,
Judge Sebutinde from Uganda.
oh, what a shame.
Because I think the votes were 15-2, right?
I have a good relationship and understanding with Museveni. And I think if she had called Museveni before she spoke, it would not be the same. I'm very convinced. Museveni is much more level-headed.
What do you think influenced her vote?
It borders on corruption. And if not corruption, it borders on a religious brainwash, where once you become a Christian, you must believe that God loves the Hebrews and God loves the Jews. And all other nations, you're second-class citizens. The only citizens in the Bible who take priority in land and etc. are the Jews. And if you become a Christian by default, you must become a Zionist.
Yeah. What did you just say?
All Christians are Zionists. And their sympathy towards the Jews and Hebrews is much more than sympathy towards themselves and their own children. I'm not ashamed to tell you this, that as a Christian, you'd rather have a Jew kill your father in the name of God than you protecting your father from the Jew. Theology controls behavior. As people believe, so they behave. And once you take this religion, your brains are brainwashed, then the Jews are actually you heard what Netanyahu said the other day? We are the Jews, chosen nation from Abraham. Who is the United Nations and NATO to tell us what we must do? We are not subject to the principles of this government. We are subject to the principles of Yahweh and God himself. So what does that say? That the Jews are above the law. They're above world standards. In fact, they're above the Bible and everything else that you deem as spiritual, because their authority and definition of existence is not human ordained, but divine ordained. And because God chose them as the chosen, the rest of you are not chosen, and you are subjects to their own decisions. What a world to live in, which is controlled by religious, bigoted people.
But then a lot of people are saying, don't mix Judaism with Zionism. What's the difference?
Spelling. The difference is spelling. It's just the same thing. To be a Zionist, you're pro-Zion. To be Judaistic, you're 2 tribes out of the other 10, which becomes a Hebrew. So to be a Zionist means you believe in the whole. To be Judaist means you only believe in the 2 kingdoms of the south. But all this belong to the same father, who is Joseph, who is Jacob. And Jacob is the son of Abraham. And if Abraham is the father of Israel. And Israel, by the way, which is actually a very interesting Egyptian concoction of Ish and Ra and El. Ishtar and Ra, which is and El. It's a combination of actually the religions of the central northern Africa. So to say that I am an Israeli, or I'm Hebrew, I am Jewish. And remember, they are not Jews they are Jewish. So they are Ish of the Jews. Because even in their Jewishness, they are not real Jews. These are Ashkenazis from the Turkish kingdoms who converted into Judaism. And Revelation 2:10 says, these are not Jews. They're children of the devil themselves, who call themselves Jews, but they're not Jews. And we know that those big nose-headed Jews, bald ears, with hair twisted on their ears, are not Jews of the Bible. These are converted Ashkenazis, Turkish people, who converted into Judaism. Who are the Jews? Good question.
Isn't your statement anti-Semitic?
Oh, have you never heard of anti-African? It's nicer to talk about anti-Semitic, but who talks about anti-African? And anti-Semitism has resulted in how many deaths? Anti-African has resulted in how many deaths? So we don't even want to attend to the people who cry over a broken nail in a saloon, over those who lost their heads and bodies in a military battle. So I don't even want to give anti-Semitism the dignity that they claim that they have. What the Jews have lost is not equivalent to what the African has lost. And in all honesty, I beg to be corrected. Even some of the Jews were involved in the slave trade and the butchering of the Africans. Now that they are in trouble, the whole world must sympathize with them. But again, it comes up on the Remnant theology. And by the way, on Friday, I'm lecturing at the University of Zimbabwe. And this will be the key note address: the dangers of Remnant theology and the abuse that theology does when people believe that they are chosen and they have a right of abusing everyone else.
Apartheid times, we went through such similar statements by the oppressive regime. And you just said something interesting now. Other people also say, why would South Africa go all the way outside of our continent when you've got Sudan problems, you've got Libya problems, you've got Congo problems, you've got etc. in all these different countries? Meanwhile, most people would say Arabs also were involved in the slave trade of our people. Why would South Africa go out of its way to go and protect Palestine?
I laughed actually last week when I was running through my social media space. You can go and Google that video out where the Palestinian children and women are actually shouting and praising and thanking South Africa for what they have done to the international community to raise their pain to those international standards. And these are Palestinians. These are Arabs. And on the left and on the right are Syrians, Iraqis, Iranians, and Saudi Arabians who are buying slaves right now as we speak from Libya, from Kenya, and from Uganda.
Right now?
They have slaves in their houses as I speak to you right now. But now, voila, South Africa speaks against Palestine, and Palestinians are up crying even just to thank South Africa for what they've done. And these are the same Arabs who will not raise their small finger to tell their fellow brothers in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia, in UAE, in Syria, in Iraq and Iran, to stop harvesting body organs from Africans, to stop slave trade, which is happening right now. Ships are leaving Libya into Middle East with slaves to go and work in the Middle East, in the Islamic space. And I want to maybe send this call loud and clear to my big brother, who I love dearly. He grew me up and he taught me 1,000 things that I would have never known. He opened my eyes to a world of information and helped me be a critical thinker and challenge the system. My only beloved brother, Louis Farrakhan, who is the leader of the Islamic movement in America. And my brother, you would do well to stand for the black people wherever they are. And if there's anything they can do at this particular moment, it is to get into the Middle East and stop the abuse of the African people, which is happening in the hands of the Islamic faith. And until you attend to some of these misgivings, Islam remains with an egg on their face, because they would close their eyes to the pain of the Africans and open up their eyes to the benefits of European economic systems. So this is a particular personal message to my own brother, and wherever I'll see him, whenever I'll see him, I wish you can be there to record it. I will relate it to him. That what messes up Islam right now, it is that it is entrenched in the slave methods of the Middle East. And religion cannot be used as a conduit for managing colonialism, no matter where it comes from, whether from a black brother or from a colonial brother. So yes, as you rightfully put it, the Islamic world, the Palestinian organizations cannot enjoy their freedom simply because God gave their land to his favorite children and told his children to kill those whom he had given the land to. Now that's God's love. You have two children. You buy this one in ice cream. You buy this one in ice cream. And then you tell this one, go and kill this one and take that ice cream. Why? Because I love you more than I love this one. Then you look at your father and says, but who made both of us? Why must I go and kill him and kill him? This war has been going on for the past 3,000, 4,000 years. And it's a theological war based on remnant theology. If I am chosen, you don't deserve to have land. You don't have rights. No reproduction, nothing. Actually, you must be my slave because I am the chosen one. God did not choose you. And this is the kind of cancer that consumes the religious spaces, particularly Christianity, to build what you now call Zionism. Zionism is the politics of remnant theology, if I can conclude on that.
Started by a journalist by the name of Theodore Herzl, right?
Are you aware that actually they wanted to give Uganda to the Israelis from Poland and Russia and Germany? They chose about 3, 4, 5 places, and they finally ended up in Palestine. And look how the world is gullible. 1948. The whole world now thinks that actually that the Garden of Eden is in Israel. This God you believe in must be sick in his head to have chosen a desert as a garden. Like really? I've been to Israel. No, I'm not buying a Facebook. I've been to Israel. I went as far as not Donetsk. Donetsk is Ukraine. I went to what do you call this place?
Tel Aviv.
Tel Aviv is the airport. Then Dimona.
Oh, okay.
Dimona is right in the Dead Sea, living sea, where the Israeli nuclear station is, right there. And we walked from there to Capernaum, through the Sea of Galilee. I went to Jericho. We came via the Gaza banks. And I spent a couple of months there. And for me, when I look into this desert and to think that the Garden of Eden, or this Eden that is spoken about in the Bible, was in this desert, it's a joke of the highest order. But then thank God for theological understanding. As I went back to my text, then the text says, and God planted a garden east of Eden. It changed everything.
And what does that mean exactly?
I need to identify where Eden is. And this is just a garden east of Eden. But east of Eden is not the Garden of Eden. Follow me carefully. So here is your house, and there's a garden east of your house. East of your house is not your house. So where is Eden?
Where is Eden?
There is the River Nile. The text goes on. Between the River Nile and the River Gihon, and what and what. Where is the River Nile? Uganda. And then you stop and say, so which part is confusing here? Why will not our theologians say this? Because the whitewashed people, it cannot be right that you identify the Eden as being Africa. Rather move it to the Middle East. If you have the Middle East, where's the Middle West? Where's the Middle South? Where's the Middle North? There's only one place in the face of the earth, as of the 1960s and 1970s, called Middle East, separated by a small little stream called the Suez Canal. When Madagascar is 1,000 kilometers away from Africa and is considered as part of Africa. But a small little stream separates Africa from the Middle East. A stream, man-made. Suez Canal. Now, that's another continent. And who told you, Enasbu? You went to school. Russia, Europe, Asia. What sea separates Russia and Asia?
The Red Sea, right?
The Red Sea. No, the Red Sea is in Africa. When you look at Russia and Asia, what sea separates those two bodies of land? I will help you, Sbu, not to torture you. There's no sea that separates them. Actually, Russia and Asia are the same. So the whole division of continents in terms of our education is just a brainwashing concept. The Platonic stone of Africa and what you call the Middle East is one. And to begin to sit in a classroom and be given this brainwashed story that Africa is smaller, Europe is bigger, America is bigger, and etc. This is the brainwashing concept of the academic institutions. And we cannot, at this age, where there's so much information, still act like we are not educated.
So Africa is larger than
Zuma said it and people laughed.
all the other continents.
Maybe to make it easier for you.
Because as I heard, apparently Africa is so big that its landmass can actually even fit China and India both in it.
Maybe.
And these are continents with each 1 billion people.
To make it easy, Sbu, because these young people are more educated than us, they must do their own research. Let's just ask the question, which is the biggest continent? What is the square meterage? What is the second largest? What is the third largest? What sea divides Europe and Asia? And what makes you call, what is beyond Alaska, Antarctica? What is beyond the south in South Africa and Cape Town? If we go beyond the ice there, what is there? When you say you've been to the moon, which is so many millions miles away, why have you not been able to cross over a few kilometers away into the sea, just across the, here. I'm not talking about the moon, which is so many millions of miles. I'm talking from Russia. You can fly another few kilometers into the ice and break through the ice wall. What is behind there? Now you're telling me you've been to the moon. Stop thumb sucking.
But Elon Musk just tweeted, somebody asked him if the concept of not the flat earth, the moon landing, if it was true. And then he confirmed that, yes, it was true.
I don't have a problem.
They just haven't been
I don't
there
have a
for-
problem with landing on the moon.
Yeah.
But I have a problem with the people that can land on the moon and they cannot land in Alaska. I have a fundamental problem. They cannot land in the South Pole here, beyond Cape Town. South African government, you are at the tip of the South. Why not just put a ship there and go further down? Let's see what is beyond those ice blocks there. Now you tell me, millions of miles into the sky. I'm not a skeptic. I'm just a lateral thinker. Now don't come to me and thumbsuck and bull dust me, telling me things that are in the sky when you can confirm things that are on the ground. Yes, uyakwazi ukwenzekana esishekho awukwazi ukwenzekana eKasi eThembisa.
Yeah.
Around your house, you don't know what is behind your house, but you know what is in Sishekho and Google it.
What is in Antarctica?
I don't know.
What is in the Bermuda Triangle?
In fact, I wish our education system was more interested in exploring these spaces than indoctrinating us with what they've come to believe is true. And some of these principles we've come to understand as true were formulated in the 1800s. And with the technology that we have right now, can we still say that the information of the 1800s is true? I mean, look at your cell phones, boo. What were the phones of the 1800s? What are the phones of 2024? And you tell me that the software of an old phone of Queen Margaret Thatcher in 1954 still operates at the same wavelength with your iPhone 14, iPhone 20 in 2024. She must be smoking wet weed.
But the theology controls human behavior.
Yeah,
And you're speaking in Zim, right?
I'm in Zim. I'm in the University of Zimbabwe, yes.
University of Zimbabwe. Yeah. Okay, and what's your key?
Theology department.
Oh, the theology department.
Yeah,
okay.
So human sciences. So they've asked me to come and do a presentation there on Friday, this Friday. So I'm flying in there tomorrow morning. And I think it will be quite an interesting, and you're fortunate being a brother to get the glimpses of the controversial comments. You will hear it from the waves, but you will say, no, I spoke to him first.
I love hanging out with you because there's always so much to learn.
Yeah.
Actually, what I'd wanted this episode to be about was a pickup from the previous episode. Maybe we can get into it, even though we're not going to cover everything. I had prepared some questions because I remember.
You mean we have not yet started?
By the way, for those who don't know, guys, go get his book. It's called African Solutions.
African Questions. And
African Solutions, right? And then the last episode that we had, we focused on the 7 pillars. And these 7 pillars that you spoke about, you said governance.
Yes, number 1.
That's your thinking tool, by the way.
Let's go together. Governance. Yes.
Business and economics.
Yes.
Agriculture.
Yes.
Education. Sports and entertainment, which is arts and culture. Health and technology.
There we go.
And spirituality.
That speaks of the African total being. There we go. That speaks of the African total being. And as Africans, if we can transform these 7 pillars in terms of our thinking, in terms of our careers, in terms of our participation, each one of us will become a liberation hero in our areas of specialty.
What are the key challenges that Africa faces in terms of governance? And I do know the problems, but I like the fact that your book was also focusing more on the solutions. Because a lot of scholars and a lot of educated people and a lot of great minds, I think we usually focus on the problems that we have, which is not a bad thing. But how do we solve these problems? So the problem of governance, the first one over there.
Let's actually run through.
Yeah.
Prepare a question on each and I'll fly it through.
All right, I have. They're
Number
written on my
1,
phone.
on governance, I'll be short also.
And how can African governance promote transparency and accountability of their public officials? Because we do know that corruption is our biggest problem.
And by the way, I will start with the bottom question.
Yeah.
In Kenya, they would rather take a vow and an oath over the Bible because they can lie after that and nothing will happen to them. They don't want to take an oath over the traditional, which swears on your mother and your relatives and your bloodlines. Because if you are lying, the consequences of these ones are more eternal. So people actually are better criminals using the modern governance systems than using the indigenous governance system. But, number one, we have a problem of governance because the people who went on to fight the governance, they came back into the economy, into the parliaments, into the governance systems, and they are maintaining the same institutions that they claim to have gone to fight for. Number two.
And while we're still on, okay, maybe let's say one question each, because when I had prepared.
Transparency, I'm already killing on that.
Yeah.
People cannot be transparent and be truthful and be honest.
Yeah.
Because the system that they use for swearing their honesty is actually not honest.
And maybe let's also look at a picture of examples of African countries that are doing well or that so far have been successful in good governance in their countries.
Beautiful governance must be
Rwanda?
Beautiful, but economics and development must not be measured in Western barometers. Development must be holistic. The question is now where Rwanda is, how much of their national reserves are still in place, how much nature is still being protected, how much clean water do they still have, how much pollution is happening. So I don't measure development in terms of how many concrete buildings do they now have around themselves, how many cell phones do they have. Then we are using the New York, London, Frankfurt model to look into African governance, which, and in terms of development, which to me it becomes totally skewed. Because right now you walk into London, you can't even drink water from the rivers of London itself. And this is the most developed country in the world. So how developed is that? New York, you can't drink water from the rivers. San Francisco, you can't drink water from those rivers. Why? Because the world-class development that stands on the banks of the river pollutes everything that is around it. Then how developed are you?
And my question was going to
how
be
many fish are in there?
The role of the private sector. And then you think of the private sector and who controls the private sector.
So hence, I'll never get tired on your platforms, being a brother and etc., to always come back here, where true development must be preservation of the core pillars that sustain life. That is land, that is water, and that is air. And as long as those three elements are maintained as healthy, then human life is sustainable. But to put concrete buildings at the destruction of these cannot be put in the same page as development. I call that destruction. If I cannot find a better word, I'll call it pollution. And human beings are polluting factors.
Number two, business and economics. And I think I'd love for us to leave them hanging so we've got
we'll come back.
A greater and a bigger conversation in the future. But number two, for the sake of time, business and economics. And how can Africa attract more foreign direct investment and promote entrepreneurship? But as much as I'm also asking about direct foreign investment, where does that money come from and at what expense, right?
There you go. And I'm glad your brains are now jogging. because it's not just about getting direct and foreign investment, beautiful language. But the question is the one, when a person brings you money, who's got bora mreki? Who's got bora mreki? Because if mreki comes, mreki runs the party. Yeah, mreki will tell you who closes the toilet and who comes in and who goes out. Mureki will tell you when the DJ must shut up and who must sit where. Mureki will choose the best seat.
He who pays lands the Qatar.
I cannot go further than that. But I hope you can get it. So when you talk about business and economics and foreign investment, attracting foreign, you almost make it sound like prostitution. Because who can attract? Like attract foreign investment, you want us to attract them. And when you attract them, are they coming to add value? Are they coming to take what we have and get away with it? But business and economics, again, we come and ask, how were we doing business in the past? How are we doing business in the present? How will you do business in the future? How are these businesses benefiting the local people? How are they protecting the environment? And what value are they adding to the local people? What shares do local people have? Are these triple P projects? How many years are these foreign investors given permission to run? And when they leave these places, what condition are they leaving the land of their exploitation?
And it doesn't even look like a lot of them are going to leave because a lot of them are on evergreen contracts, right?
But evergreen, because it's you. Drive from East Rand to Johannesburg and just take pictures of those yellow mountains of cyanide. And you say the yellow green, It's yellow-green as long as the resources are there. When the resources are finished, they put a big fence around and put danger, and they fly off to Dubai and back to their own homes.
And no beneficiation took place.
They can't even restore the land or take that sand and put it back where they took it from. Now there you are in Johannesburg. When you are flying into Johannesburg, it's like it's full of mountains. But those mountains are mountains of cyanide. And who cares when the owners of these mountains are sitting in Windsor, in Dubai, and enjoying the benefits of what they've harvested from Africa? So we're talking about business. It must be sustainable business. And let me speak like an African. It must be preservative business to local environment. And until we begin to design models of business that preserve nature, our own civilizations will kill us.
And I don't even know, or maybe let me put it this way, the trade agreements that African countries have amongst each other. But for me, the first question would be, do we even have a borderless Africa amongst ourselves before we even talk about neighbors?
It's not even here. As a South African, when someone says I'm Malawian, or I'm Zimbabwean, or I'm Nigerian, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Unless you have to slap yourself to come to become this DJ Sbu, whom the world knows. But waking up from your sleep and someone says, I'm from Angola. What goes through your system? And by the way, don't feel bad. That's what you have been taught. That we are exactly where they want us to be. And to undermine that kind of knowledge system and the contamination is done to our minds will be so naive that the borders you're talking about are invisible borders. Because you go to Tlokweng in Botswana. You go to Palale. I went there to a holiday resort one day, just want to go and check out where Palala is. Literally, there's a small little stream like from here to the door there. There in South Africa, that's Botswana. Cows cross over and they eat across both sides, depending where the grass is. People drive their cattle across the borders. Go to Lesotho, Maseru. Go to Lubombo in Swaziland. And walk around these spaces where borders are supposed to be here. And you discover Umalumola, Antula. So where do you draw lines where human beings stop in Africa when the Tsongas in Guyana and the Tsongas in South Africa, the Tsongas in Mozambique and the Tsongas in Zimbabwe are actually one people? Where do you want to draw the line and separate them? When the Tongas in Zimbabwe and the Tongas in Zambia, when the Tswanas and so if I can ask you a question, where are Buenasbu?
So originally from Limpopo. Muleche Rapao.
Yeah. Can you walk with me and show me where the Guyane, the Tsonga people and the Venda people and the Pedi people, if one would give you a pencil and say, draw and show me where each tribe stops.
I can't.
You can't. Because the African, we fuse into each other. So even discussing borders, it's an insult to our very core of existence. To put borders between Africans only shows that we don't actually understand what Africans are like.
Trade agreements?
Trade agreements, again, we're trading with who? Who is the referee in the game? Maybe that's a real question. Because to agree and to do business is another thing. But to have a KFC running in South Africa and the food standards are being determined by FDA, food, whatever, in Canada. To sell your chicken in Braamfontein, you must have a letter from Canada saying that the chicken you're selling in the KFC in South Africa meets our standard. And if your chicken don't meet our standard, then the chicken from Brazil must come to South Africa to meet that standard. You don't see that as manipulation? In other words, we cannot produce what we can sell in our own country until FDA approves it in Canada. Who don't even eat mkhodu. They don't even know what delele looks like. They don't even know what our food looks like. But they determine what you must go and buy as fast foods. So every restaurant in Africa, most of the international recognized restaurants, must comply with FDA. And where is FDA? Do they even know where Guyana is? Do they even know where Lepalale is? But they were determined that if you want to do business. So you're talking about control. There we are. And this is not only on the food sector. This is actually the visa of food. That even our food is colonized as much as our passports are colonized.
Number 3, agriculture, while we're still in the subject of food.
What are we eating? Who plants the food? What kind of seeds are we eating? Where did these seedless grapes come from? Where did this seedless maize come from? Why is that every year we must be buying new seeds every year? What happened to the olden days when we would plant our seeds? We harvest them, we plant them again, and we plant them again, because they had life in them. But in modernity, you plant it once, you can't plant it again. Here's the problem of agriculture. Once you plant these seeds, the yields are very high, beautiful. You can feed more people. But to maintain these products and these seeds, the amount of pesticides you're going to be using for insects and what. And the question at the end of the day, where are all these pesticides washing back into the water? How much damage is happening, and etc. So it comes back again that after you've had a good plate of pizza, how many things have died in the environment to give you one plate of good pizza? So agriculture must be indigenous and also must be preservative to the local environment, using indigenous seeds and protecting land.
So how do we use technology to improve agricultural productivity?
We were never hungry at any given time in our history until we lost our land and we were living in townships. Now we must be fed because we can't feed ourselves. There's not a time in history where the African went to Europe begging for food. Go back in your history and study for the longest of time. We don't hear of any sheep leaving Africa to go anywhere to look for a plate of food. Until colonialism came, then Africa becomes poor. Why are they poor? Because they don't have land. Why don't they have land? Because they can't plow on it. What are they plowing on it? They're plowing seeds that are not productive. Then what must we do? We must give them seeds that are genetically modified. Then they can feed themselves. But why are you planting coffee instead of food? Because coffee is needed in Europe. But we are using the same land I need to plant my food in. No, but when you make the money, then you give the money back to me and I give you the food. It's a vicious cycle of poverty, where land is taken away and you must plant things. Look at Mpumalanga, for example. How many plantations of trees are there? Talk to me.
Bill Gates has been buying up all the farms in America. And you obviously know the company Monsanto. And a lot of people are concerned, what does that mean for the rest of the world?
On that one, I'd rather give you Rutendo.
Yeah.
Benson, he has done a brilliant research onto that.
Yeah.
And I don't want to temper into his space.
Okay.
Where actually the organic foods versus the genetically modified seeds.
Yeah.
And how actually Sweden and Norway are actually beginning to build seed banks for the whole world in case the world gets drowned or whatever, or it's a flood, or it's a fire, or it's an asteroid. Then they want to remain being the custodians of the organic seeds in the whole world. So they've built these huge warehouses where all the organic seeds, they're just basically stocking them up. And imagine how African leaders are not even aware to understand, even to wake up from slumber, to say, South Africa, do you have a seed bank of organic South African seeds, be it grass, be it for wild trees, be it your rooibos leaves, be it your maize, be it your sweet potatoes? Do you have? Here we are in Parliament. Point of order, comrade. Point of order, comrade. And your stomachs are full of food. And yet you cannot even protect the very essence of your survival as a people. That's what I call foolish, constipated with ideology politicians who have no understanding of reality, of what life is all about.
Number 4,
I'm sorry to be so.
it's okay. No, don't apologize.
So blunt.
Don't apologize, Bishop. Go in. Go in. Go in.
Sebangena.
Go in. No fear. Number 4, education.
Governance, business and economics,
Agriculture. Education.
education. What is the quality of learning that we are giving our children? Who is writing the curriculum? Does it entail? Where are these children going? How are they going to be working? What future holds on for them? What kind of people are they going to become? What are they learning about? Who must they understand? And after they understand all these things, what are they going to become? So education for me becomes a brainwashing session where you bring your children 8 to 4 in the every day to be told about the other, except about themselves. It's a colonial management tool for controlling the thinking of the next generation. And if you can capture them young, when they are old, they become your servants. Thank you.
So what's the solution there?
You are the
'Cause
solution.
I know some parents have taken it upon themselves to homeschool their children.
It's not even about homeschooling, yes, boo. It's about our systems understanding what quality of students we want to produce.
Yeah.
Why must I homeschool my children? When you are sitting in the government and you are spending my tax money to produce a curriculum in an education that you know that my child does not need, where are we missing it? The whole government sits around the Department of Education, higher and lower education, discussing what? How many angels can dance at the sharpest point of a needle, and how many legs does a grasshopper have? And you want me to pay for that education for my child until I have to come up with a solution of homeschooling my children. So why there's an institution? This is what I'm saying, is we don't need a new Africa. We need new Africans. With a new type of thinking.
You want to throw away the child with the bucket water?
We don't need a new Africa, Spoo. We don't need a new Africa. We need a new group of
Africans, yeah.
New African bankers.
New ideas.
New African
everything.
bankers. New African politicians. New African educationists. New African insurers. New African inventors. New African politicians. New African teachers. Who can come here and say, here is what we can contribute as Africa to the rest of the world. But no. What do we have? We have photocopied, recycled human manure, standing in the front of our own children and telling them what the world is all about.
Number 5, entertainment, sports, arts, and culture.
This is your department. You can say something at least. You can share your frustration when it comes to who is feeding our children. What kind of content are they sending out there? Who writes the narratives and controls those narratives? Which sports are all these young people in their own houses? Look at this one, he's putting on Bronx. You go to his house, you might find Manchester United. This one, you might find he's Liverpool, he's Chelsea, he's an R&B. This one is
Hip-hop is a rapper, this one.
hip-hop and all this culture, subculture. Oh, beautiful.
Got an album coming out.
And it's a beautiful...
Arty the Black.
It's a beautiful expression of art and culture. But the question is, again, from education to arts and culture, what information are you sending out there? And on that one, I will not miss it, Sbu, even in my sleep. Our culture, our art is the library of our ancestors, where they've left us information to guide us into the next generation. So when we go to our crafts, when we go to our arts, when we go to our cultural relics, our fathers did not write volume 1, volume 2, volume 3, volume 4. I come to you in this generation submitting such simplicity, of such complexity, of knowledge, to say it's not about a doctorate and a PhD that is single-spaced and bound on plastic. that you can say you're a professor and you're a doctor, but to understand your culture and read through the archives of the writings of your ancestors through arts and crafts is to unlock the library of the ancestors. This includes your sports. Mulabalaba. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 2, 3. Look at the mathematical formulas. The Shango bones. First calculators that were created on the face of the earth. Look into the pyramids of Giza. The drawings. Look into the masks of Gambia. The interactions with aliens and stuff. Look into those masks and tell me that people are just daydreaming, doing all these things. They captured that history. They encoded it into pieces of art. So that when the next generation comes, it will find, hey, this is serious education. Whereas in English, once upon a time, there was. In Africa, there's not once upon a time. There is a mask. We saw that at one time of our history. 1,000 years later, you come back and you look at that, and you can stand with your ancestor who saw it. There's the Pyramid of Giza in Zalo Elang. It's great Zimbabwe ruins. Here is our technology. Here's evidence of what we understood. Who can walk up back to culture and come back ignorant? The weakest link is our young people who don't go there to learn architectural, medicinal, cosmological, anthropological, agricultural, political information that is embedded in tools. You see the way these things are structured. You see you cannot translate them to knowledge systems. Then what happens to you? You look at things and you appreciate them as pieces of art, but you never see them as pieces of information and knowledge. So arts and culture actually becomes our library to the past that we are almost forgetting. But as long as some of us are still alive, this information will be sent on. We are conduits of information between the past and the future.
Talking about information, farmers of thought. I know a lot of people who might be falling into this content or for the first time. Where do we find farmers of thought, and what is farmers of thought before we get into the 6th and the 7th?
We are just taking your brain as an orchard, as a field, as a piece of estate, managing the quality of seed that falls on it, managing it and growing it, trimming it, and hopefully one day before I die, I should be able to come back there and harvest from it. But we use the model of farming to the models of thinking. So farmers of thought simply means working on your mind as a piece of estate.
And there's tons of content there for the past 10, 20 years?
Almost, yeah. So it's a big body. And if anyone wants to become my student, don't come and say you want me to mentor you. Just go back there, take all that content and classify it, review it, and then call me on your 4th year or 5th year. Then I'll engage you.
So that's Farmers of Thought, guys. And then the name of the book is African Questions, African Solutions.
It's on Take a Lot, it's on Amazon, and
Let's go to number 6, health and technology.
yeah. This is the most interesting one of all of them because we're just coming out of COVID now. So we're still sanitizing. We still know what masks look like. We're still recovering from spraying things around our homes. I don't know during COVID how many sanitized their wives and sanitized their husbands. But
Yeah.
but I think I could almost see those were germ specialists walking around the spray, you know.
I still see people do that at the gym even till today.
Yeah, spray
Even
some-
this morning, they come clean the machine before they climb on it.
Health and technology speaks again of our health is our wealth. And as part of the thinking tool, without good health, even the richest man is poor. So how do you look after yourself? Self-preservation. How do you look after your family? How do you look after a community? How do you become a healthy person? Because without that element of being healthy, the entire life becomes a nightmare. A millionaire cannot enjoy his millions with a broken nail. Nail, not even a broken finger. And a man has $1 million in his account. I'm telling you that the pain on the finger will overshadow. He would do anything to pay to get that pain off his finger. But when we have health as a blessing in our hands, how much time do we spend to vandalize it and destroy it, to get ourselves sick, and then spend all the money that we have been making to regain it back? Technology speaks of innovation. And our health and technology section has shown us actually there's huge sums of money to be made in terms of health and technology. I said this once in one of your interviews, I'll say it again. Our young people must go back again, identify indigenous medicines, beneficiate them, create businesses of innovations, new aeroplanes, make bicycles that can fly, make new boats that can float, study nature. Look how things are behaving in nature. See how a hippo can go under the ground for so many minutes and does not drown. Is that not a submarine? And how can you extend that? See how an eagle flies against the tide in the big storm. Is that not aviation? How do these animals, why are their horns shaped like this? Look at what Shaka did in terms of his battles. And he simply picked up the horns of an ox. Now it's a technology of a military strategy. One horn on the left, one on the right. The center, dip it in, disturb the enemy on the left, disturb the enemy on the right. As they are moving in, the center moves in and strike and kill. How many battles did Shaka win by simply understanding how a cow fights and convert that technology into his military strategy? Which animal wins the battle? The one with the long spear or the one with the short spear? Who wins? The one who throws a spear or the one who stabs from inside? So we need to study nature to understand how can a banana stay fresh after it has been harvested for so many weeks and still can be eaten. And how do ants end up inside an apple and in a fig tree, in a fig, without dying? What sciences are there? How does a tree transport tons of water? A gum tree transports almost 15, 20 gallons of water per day into the... And how does that work in the midst of osmosis and gravity and what? How are the... So nature becomes the teacher of knowledge. And those who go there to understand how the fish swim, how the birds fly, why does the ox that eats grass eats its placenta, a cow, after it has given birth? For the first time, a cow eats meat, turns back on its own placenta and eats all of it back to get the T cells and everything into its body, so that when the calf is now breastfeeding, it has high protein and protection from diseases. What lessons can we learn from this as human beings? Is it okay that human beings can eat their own placentas also, or preserve them as treatment centers for the T cells when the children get sick in the future? And what? I'm not teaching witchcraft. I'm just saying, learn to observe nature. And when you understand nature, maybe that's why the Bible says, you fool, go back to the ants and look at their ways, and you'll be wise. What does not make sense to me that the ant hills are still standing in Mozambique and in Zimbabwe, when double-story buildings built by human beings have been floored to the ground. Then who is more educated here? The ants have a technology that survives the storm. The human being, his technology cannot survive. Then where is knowledge? So health and technology speaks of finding indigenous organic health systems that can be sustainable during moments of disaster. And being creative. At the rate at which we are going, we should be to the moon and back by now. But our technologies, we don't understand how an eagle flies that high, does not have an oxygen tank. And we still don't understand how it flies. And yet we want to go to the moon.
Governance, business and economics, agriculture, education, sports, arts and culture, entertainment, health and technology, lastly, spirituality.
Connection to the omniscient. The human body is a signal collector. to the supernatural and that which is above us. And the question is, when these systems are all aligned together, then the human body can begin to experience what it means to be connected to the spiritual. Is the spiritual stuff going to church, going to a mosque, killing a chicken and drinking its blood? And what is that spirituality? I'll close by telling you that it is spirit and ritual. The question is, what rituals are you doing that make you spiritual? Therefore, rituals are the diet of the spirit, for they unlock your spiritual presence through the rituals in performance. I thank you.
Bishop Joshua MAPONGA, standing ovation every time. No interview has been, or let me say, all of our interviews have been not even just top 10, top 5 of this podcast. People love your knowledge. People criticize your knowledge, which you proudly welcome. And I love the fact that you provoke thoughts. You create conversations. And you're such an amazing orator. Your words are impeccable. Your words are impeccable. But just your mind and just how you are able to express yourself and challenge people's thoughts, it's totally amazing. But the one thing that I love the most about you is you love the black African child with all of your heart.
You can kill me on that one.
And thank you for that.
Thank you. But thank you, Sbu. Thank you, Sbu. I could not comment much when you were going through the storms in the last few weeks, but you know you have a brother. And I understand the industry much more also. I've been there. I was sold to a record company for a dime and a song, and I came back 5 years later with about $500 in my hand, 500 rand in my hand. So when I saw them talking, I said, "Oh, Pastor, how can you do it? His thing is,
It's okay.
But it's fine. But I just thought I'd pass on and say, my brother, don't stop doing what you're doing. You're doing a wonderful job, and we respect you. We appreciate you. You are influencing and challenging and encouraging dozen young people out there from Africa, and we just want to say thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you, Bishop. I love you very much.
Where's your next trip? Where are you going?
My next trip, geez, that's a good question. I think I'm going to go back to Tanzania, and then I'm going to go to Kenya, and then I'm going to go to, I have not gone to, it's been 5 years, I haven't been to Egypt.
Last time I came here,
and Ethiopia.
I did something arrogant.
Ah!
We buried the American.
American.
This time I'm giving you pocket money of $10. When you get to Tanzania, get yourself a SIM card.
Thank you, sir.
And call me.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to Jamaica next week.
Okay.
For the Ubuntu Awakening Conference. So we'll see you when you come back.
Thank you for the seeds. Yeah. I'll make sure that I put in 7, actually 8 zeros on this one.
No, it's just a passport in the international community that continue doing what you're doing.
Siyabonga mkhulu. Magwande, makhanye, maglunge. Yonke into mayilunge, magpope, magube mocha. And to the family, thank you to your family for borrowing you to the rest of us. And I also see you taking your storms every time. But every time when I see you just smiling. Ngumkhumbuza ubaba uMsholozi. Simthuka. It's okay. Simthuka. I love you, sir.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bishop Joshua MAPONGA. Danko.